All right, so get this. We're going deep into Kubernetes today, but not the usual stuff.
Oh,
Yeah, we're talking about what people wish Kubernetes could do.
like their dream features.
Exactly, the stuff they're practically begging for.
Yeah.
And we've got this great source, one feature Kubernetes needs, community thoughts on enhancements. You're going to love this deep dive, by the way.
I bet, especially with how much I know you follow the future of tech.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, so to help us break it all down, we've got expert speaker.
Hey everyone, always excited to dig into this stuff. Community feedback really drives Kubernetes development.
Okay, so one thing that popped out in the article is config maps. It's this pain point where you update your config file thinking your app will reload and nothing.
Oh yeah, that's a classic Kubernetes headache. You'd think it'd be simple.
Right, like Kubernetes is all about managing application state. So updating a config file should be a breeze.
In theory. But it gets tricky. Because of how Kubernetes handles configuration, it's not really designed for constant changes to config files after deployment.
And the article mentions people using janky workarounds for years.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
So why is this so hard for Kubernetes to get right?
Well, it's all about declarative configuration, right? You define that desired end state in your config files, and Kubernetes takes care of it. But that system isn't made for constant dynamic changes.
I see. So what's the solution then? The article mentions tools like Stack and Reloader.
Those can help, definitely. But they're kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a bigger issue.
So not a real fix.
Right. Having native support for dynamic ConfigMap updates baked right into Kubernetes, that would be huge.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What else is on people's wish lists?
Another big one. Namespace-scoped custom resource definitions, CRDs.
Okay, stop right there. For those of us who aren't Kubernetes gurus, what are CRDs and why does the namespace thing matter?
Sure. So CRDs basically let you extend Kubernetes, teach it about new types of objects specific to your app.
So kind of like creating custom tools,
Exactly. But the problem is, without namespaces, these CRDs are cluster-wide.
meaning anyone can mess with them.
Pretty much. One person's change could have a ripple effect across a whole system, and that's where the security concerns come in.
Yeah, the article quoted someone who made serious mistakes because of this.
Yeah. So namespace-scoped CRDs would be like a safety net. Each team gets their own isolated space to manage their custom objects.
So less accidental damage and more autonomy.
Exactly. It makes Kubernetes more robust and secure, especially as organizations scale up.
Oh, this next one is interesting. We're talking gRPC,
Mm-hmm.
that communication protocol everyone's using for microservices. So why doesn't Kubernetes natively support it for load balancing?
Good question. It seems like a no-brainer, right? But the reality is trickier.
How so?
Well, it's about how gRPC handles load balancing. It works at layer 7, which deals with the content of the messages, not just directing traffic, but understanding what that traffic is.
So it needs more than just IP addresses and ports.
Right. It needs to look inside the envelope, so to speak.
Makes sense. The article says native gRPC load balancing would be a game changer. Why is the community so hyped about it?
Think about it. More and more apps are using gRPC. Kubernetes needs to adapt to stay relevant.
Keep up with the times.
Exactly. Imagine Kubernetes understanding how your services communicate and optimizing traffic accordingly. That's the power of native gRPC support.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about something I think you'll relate to. Have you ever had an application crash and you have no clue why?
Oh, all the time. It's a nightmare trying to figure out what went wrong.
And that's where ephemeral storage comes in. Or rather, the challenges it brings when things go south.
Ephemeral storage.
Yeah, it's that temporary storage that lives and dies with a pod. Great for caches and temp files, but when it fills up, crashes.
And you're left with no clues.
Right. So the community is proposing file system snapshots,
Huh.
taken at the exact moment ephemeral storage maxes out.
Interesting. Like a black box recorder?
Exactly. You could see which files were hogging space. Maybe spot a memory leak or a bug.
I can see how that would be super helpful for debugging, especially in complex environments where reproducing issues is a pain.
This next wish list item is super relatable. It's like having to re-enter your Wi-Fi password on every device in your house. Annoying, right?
Ugh, yes. Tell me about it.
Well, that's what managing secrets and config maps across multiple namespaces can feel like in Kubernetes.
The repetition. The inefficiency.
And the article highlights this. Why should we have to? Feeling from users.
They want a simpler way, being able to define secrets and config maps at the cluster level, accessible to any namespace.
No more duplication. Much cleaner.
Right. Especially for large organizations with tons of teams.
Okay, let's talk about Helm. Seems like a love-hate relationship for a lot of developers.
Helm's great for managing complex deployments, don't get me wrong, But when things get really intricate, it struggles.
The article quotes someone saying Helm can't handle anything beyond simple logic.
Yeah, the templating system gets clunky and managing dependencies across different Helm charts can be a mess.
So it's hitting its limits.
Kind of. The community's looking at alternatives like Customize and Flux.
What makes them stand out?
They're more modular and customizable. You can build on base configurations and overlay changes without all the templating headaches.
More control, more flexibility.
Exactly.
All right, last but not least, out-of-memory events.
Yeah.
You know, the drill, your app crashes, Kubernetes says out of memory, and that's it.
Not very helpful.
Nope. And developers are understandably frustrated. They need to know why their app ran out of memory.
Absolutely. Imagine if those events came with way more detail, like which processes were using the most memory or memory usage patterns leading up to the crash.
So not just a vague error, but a full diagnostic report.
Exactly. You could pinpoint the root cause so much faster.
Well, that wraps up part 1 of our Kubernetes wish list exploration. Stick around for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into what these requests tell us about the future of Kubernetes. Welcome back to our Kubernetes wish list deep dive. So we've talked about some really specific requests, like better config maps and more control over CRDs. But what does all of this tell us about the bigger picture? Like, where is Kubernetes headed?
You know, it's interesting. A lot of these requests point to a desire for Kubernetes to kind of grow up, mature beyond its early days.
Memeing.
Well, the community loves the flexibility and power, but they want it to be smoother, more user-friendly.
Less hacking things together.
Exactly. They want fewer workarounds, less reliance on external tools.
Makes sense. As Kubernetes becomes more mainstream, people expect more from it.
Right. It's not just a toy for tech giants anymore. It's becoming the standard for how companies build and deploy software.
And that brings a whole new set of needs.
For sure.
It's also interesting how many of these requests focus on better debugging tools. It's not just about managing the infrastructure anymore. It's about understanding what's happening inside applications.
Absolutely. As we rely more on Kubernetes for critical systems, we need to know exactly what's going on.
No more flying blind.
Right. We can't just know that an app crashed. We need to understand why.
Speaking of why, we talked about that mystery of why Kubernetes doesn't support gRPC load balancing yet.
Mm-hmm.
What do the community's excitement about this feature tell us?
I think it shows they want Kubernetes to be more than just a platform. They want it to be a partner in innovation.
Meaning?
Well, they're using new technologies like gRPC because it solves real problems for them, and they want Kubernetes to keep up.
To provide the tools they need to build the next generation of software.
Exactly.
So it's all about evolution. Kubernetes evolving alongside the applications it supports.
Absolutely. Staying ahead of the curve.
Okay, let's go back to Helm for a second. We talked about how it's powerful, but maybe reaching its limits. Where does the community want to see it go from here?
I think they're ready for Helm to level up, to move beyond the basics.
It's served its purpose, but now they need something more.
Right. As applications become more complex, Helm's limitations become clearer.
And they're looking for alternatives.
Yep, like Customize and Flux.
Why are those standing out?
They offer more flexibility and control. You can build on base configurations and make changes without dealing with Helm's complex templates.
Ah, so a more modular approach. Okay, time to talk about something near and dear to my heart. Debugging tools. We mentioned those frustrating out-of-memory errors that don't tell you anything useful.
Yeah, those are the worst.
Why is improving these tools so important?
Because developers need better information. Plain and simple. We're building more complex systems on Kubernetes, and we need to be able to understand what's going on.
To diagnose problems quickly and fix them.
Right. And also to prevent them in the first place.
So it's not just about reacting to problems, it's about being proactive.
Exactly. We need tools that can give us deep insights into our applications, like how they're using resources, how different processes are behaving, that kind of thing.
It's like having X-ray vision for your applications.
Yes, we need that level of visibility to build truly robust and reliable software.
Makes sense. But as we add more features to Kubernetes, how do we keep it accessible to everyone?
That's the key, finding that balance between power and usability.
We don't want to create a platform that only extras can use.
Right. We need to make sure Kubernetes is approachable for developers of all skill levels.
So it's about designing intuitive interfaces, providing great documentation, and building a supportive community.
Exactly. It's all about empowering developers.
Well said. And that's a wrap for part 2 of our Kubernetes wishlist exploration. Join us for the final part, where we'll wrap everything up and discuss what this all means for the future of Kubernetes. Welcome back to our final part of this Kubernetes wishlist journey. It's been really cool to see how passionate the community is about shaping the platform. It's clear they really care about making Kubernetes the best it can be.
Yeah, it shows you the power of open source, right? These aren't just people using the software, they're actively involved, pushing for improvements, giving feedback. It's awesome.
Totally. It's like they see Kubernetes as a collaboration, something they're building together, not just a tool. And that energy, that's what makes open source so cool, so dynamic.
I agree. It's always evolving, growing, and it's all thanks to the community. Sharing their knowledge and ideas, it makes me really optimistic about the future of Kubernetes.
Speaking of the future, if you could add just one feature to Kubernetes, what would it be? What's your dream feature?
Oh man, that's a tough one. So many possibilities. But if I had to pick just one, I think I'd focus on the developer experience, specifically around troubleshooting and debugging.
Yeah, that's been a recurring theme for sure. The community is definitely feeling the pain there.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, as applications get more complex, debugging becomes even more crucial. Imagine if Kubernetes could go beyond those simple error messages. What if it could actually help you pinpoint the problem?
Like automatically finding bottlenecks or resource leaks.
Exactly, or even suggest code optimizations. It would be like having a Kubernetes expert looking over your shoulder.
That would be a game changer. Developers could spend less time debugging and more time building amazing things.
Right, and that's what's so exciting about the future of Kubernetes. The potential is huge. We could have tools that not only manage our infrastructure, but actually help us write better software.
It's like the next level of developer tools.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, I think that's a fantastic place to wrap things up. The future of Kubernetes is bright, thanks to this passionate community. I can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be a part of it all.
And to everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What feature would you add to Kubernetes? What would make your life as a developer better? Share your ideas, join the conversation, and help shape the future of Kubernetes. Until next time, keep on coding.